Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Hare
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Kishore Prabhuji, whenever you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji. Oh.
Hare Krishna devotees, happy Janmashtami. Today we are reading Canto 2. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you, Prabhuji.
Today we'll be reading from chapter 10. Bhagavatam is the answer. Bhagavatam is the answer for all questions. So I am to read today from text 20 to 48.
28, text 28 to 40, Prabhuji.
Okay, 28 to 40. Text 28. Thereafter, let me start with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Yasam Tato Jayamudire. नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. Text 28. Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and the death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both death and the separating force. Text 29. When there was a desire to have food and drink, the abdomen and intestines were, and also the arteries became manifested. The rivers and the seas are the source of their sustenance and metabolisms. Text 30. When there was a desire to think about the activity of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, determination, and all desires became manifested. Text 31. The seven elements of body, namely the thin air on the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. Text 32. The sense organs are attached to the mode of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences like happiness, distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. Text 33. Thus, by all this, the external feature of the personality of Godhead is covered by a gross form, such as those of the planets, which were explained to you by me. 34. Therefore, beyond this gross manifestation is the transcendental manifestation, finer than the finest form. It has no beginning, no intermediate stage, and no end. Therefore, it is beyond the limits of expression or mental speculation. and it is distinct from the material conception of our brains. Text 35. Neither of the above forms of the Lord, as just described unto you from the material angle of vision, is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know him well. Text 36. He, the personality of Godhead, manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, quality, pastime, entourage, and the transcendental variegatedness. Although he is unaffected by all such activity, he appears to be so engaged. Text 37 to 40. O King, know me, know from me that all living entities are created by the Supreme Lord according to their past deeds. These include Brahma and his son like Daksha, the periodical heads like Vaishnava, Vaivasvata Manu, the demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna, the great sages like Bhrigu, Vyasa, and Vasishta, the inhabitants of Pitraloka and Siddhaloka, the Charanas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Asuras, Yakshas, Kinnaras, and angels, the serpentines, the monkey-shaped, and Kimpurusas, the human beings, the inhabitants of Mitraloka, the demons, Pishachas, ghosts, spirits, lunatics, and the evil spirits, the good and evil stars, the goblins, the animals in the forest, the birds, the household animals, the reptiles, the mountains, the moving and standing living entities, the living entities born from embryos, from egg, from perspiration, and from seeds, and all others, whether they be in water, land, or sky, in happiness, in distress, or in mixed happiness and distress. All of them, according to their past deeds, are created by the Supreme Lord. So I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kishore Prabhuji. When you're ready, you can start, Krishna and Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Kishore Prabhuji, for reading translations. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, 10th chapter. Title Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So before I start, I wish everyone a happy Janmashtami. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschapta Deshtarane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktaram. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just to give a background in this chapter, Sukadeva Goswami is narrating to Maharaj Parikshit how this creation happened from Mahavishnu, then Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. Then also he narrates how the body parts of universal form, Virat Purusha, appeared with the desire of the Supreme Lord, starting with the mouth, ears, eyes, nose, etc. like that. And after hearing this narration, Saunaka Mahamuni requested Suta Goswami to narrate the discussions between the Vidura and Maitreya Muni. So this was the conversation going on between Vidura and Maitreya, because Saunaka Mahamuni, who is the leader of the many sages assembled in Naimasaranya, requested Suta Goswami to speak about the Krishna's transcendental pastimes, because he is more interested in that than Krishna's material, temporary, universal form. So far in this chapter, we heard how Sukadeva Goswami mentions to Maharaj Parikshit, like the Bhagavatam discuss about 10 topics, like the primary creation, secondary creation, how the planets are situated, how the Supreme Lord maintains this. Like that, there are 10 topics that are described in this Bhagavatam. Then Sukadeva Goswami talks how Mahavishnu, lying on the Karna ocean, and from his body pores, unlimited universes comes out when he breathes out. So then he expands himself into Garbhodakasaya Vishnu and enters into each universe. So then he started narrating about the Virata Purusha, the universal form of the Supreme Lord. So starting with like when the Supreme Lord in the form of universal form, so when he got hunger and thirst and he wanted to drink and eat, then the mouth appeared. So like that, different parts started appearing from the universal form. So in the last sloka, we see that so when he desired to evacuate the refuse of eatables, then the evacuating whole anus. So those things are appear, and the controlling deity for those things are Mitra. So like that. So today we'll continue that, and in the text 28, we see that the universal form, Krishna in the form of universal form. So when he desired to move from one body to another, so what parts appeared? The navel appeared, and the air of departure and the death, they were combinedly created. And here Sukadeva Goswami is saying that navel is the shelter for death and the separating force. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that there are two types of life, vayus, like prana vayu, which is the continuing the life, and there is apana vayu, so which stops the living force. Prabhupada mentions that both vibrations are generated from the navel, abdominal hole. So but that's the navel. That's why the navel is the joint from one body to the other. So we see Lord Brahma also was born, the first living entity of this university. He was born from the abdominal hole of the Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. So the lotus flowers came out from the navel of the Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. On top of that, Lord Brahma appeared. So that's why the navel is the separates the body. And we see the same principles followed even in the general process in this material world. Like when a baby was born, so the baby comes out from the joint is attached in the navel, like that. And the controlling deity for this is mentioned in the previous chapter. It's called Anila Atma. So the controlling deity is Anila. So he's the control by the sense of touch also. So both death and birth, they both are those vibrations come from the navel. So and we see that both birth and death are very suffering in this material world. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosha darshanam, like so much suffering. So people may think that birth is a happy event, but not really, because the one who gives birth, the mother, she also go through so much pain and anxieties, and the baby who is coming out from the womb also, for 9 months they will be suffering in the womb of the mother. So that is explained in the Bhagavatam detailedly. Like so similarly, death is also very suffering. Like mentions that, when someone is bitten by 10,000 scorpions, how much pain it will be there? That much pain will be there when the living entity is leaving the body. So it's so much suffering. So that's why Sukadeva Goswami stresses that liberation is the permanent solution for all the these sufferings. So in the text 29, we see that and Krishna in the universal form, and he desired to have a food and drink, the abdomen and the intestines and also the arteries. So they manifested, and the controlling deities are rivers and seas. They are the source of the sustenance and metabolism. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the controlling deities for the intestines and are the rivers, and for the arteries, the seas are the controlling deities. And he mentions that fulfillment of the belly with food and drink is the cause of the sustenance, and the metabolism of the food and drink replaces the waste of the bodily energies. So these two things, the sustenance and metabolism. These are the two things for eating and then digesting, for both of them. So the Prabhupada says that the body's health depend on the healthy actions of the intestines and the arteries. It depends on these two things. And because the rivers and seas are the controlling deities, so they keep the intestines and the arteries in a healthy order. So in the previous chapter also, 6th chapter, we hear the same kind of thing. Nadya, Nada, Nadinam cha, like, in the universal form of the beings, we see that the great rivers and the small rivers, they all flow together. So Krishna's universal form, the beings of the Krishna's universal form represents the river. So they are nothing but the rivers that we see in this material world. Like, so that's why Ayurveda recommends to take bath in the flowing river. So if anybody has any nervous issues, so it recommends to take the bath regularly in the flowing rivers. Similarly, oceans have an effect on abdomen. So someone who has a digestion issue, so the lack of fire in the abdomen, then the Ayurveda recommends them to reside close to the ocean and take bath in that. So by doing regularly, then their hunger and thirst will become straightened out. So it will be proper. So, and these are the very essential parts, am I right? Nervous and arteries. So if they don't work properly, then people will get so many bodily issues, mental issues like that. And they also carry the air and blood. So that helps the body to be active. So we see that, it's not the creation is not happened just like that, or unexpectedly or accidentally happened. It was a perfect creation done by the Supreme Lord, very perfectly and completely, so that the living entities can fulfill their desires. And Krishna also arranged the controlling deities for each of the thing to manage it. So we see here the rivers and seas. In the past loka is the Anila, the demigod Anila. So like that. So that's why Krishna says that, to cooperate with the demigods, and prescribes to perform a yajna to please them. So by pleasing the Krishna, then we can please all the demigods also. Of course, the process to please in this Kali Yuga, pleasing Krishna is the yajna for this Kali Yuga is the Sankirtan yajna, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So if we perform that yajna, then Krishna is pleased, and if Krishna is pleased, all the living entities are pleased, including the demigods, all the in charges of the universal form. So in the text 30, we see that when the universal form desired to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart appeared. So that heart is the seat of the mind. Then the mind, the moon, and the determination all the desires, they all become manifested. So we see that, the heart is the seat of the mind, and the mind and the moon, all these things are appeared. Even in the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna mentions that he resides in each and every living entity's body as the super soul. So Hriddesha Arjuna Tishtati, like that. So when the super soul is situated in the heart of the conditioned soul, then the mind is manifested. So only when the super soul is situated, then the bodily functions of the individual living entity starts. Like the mind manifests, then he becomes consciousness of his occupation or his duties, like that. So when the material mind of the living entity develops, then the controlling deity of that material mind is the moon. So then the activities will start, like, thinking, feeling, and willing. So they all take place. So that's why Krishna suggests that, mind is the source of all these things, like thinking, feeling, and willing. So we need to control the mind. So Krishna tells in the Bhagavad Gita to control the mind, because if it is not controlled, then it becomes worst enemy for us. So it will make us to go through suffering so much. So if it is controlled, then it is a best friend. So to control the mind, so we have to fill the mind with the positive thoughts or the spiritual thoughts, like associating with devotees, reading Krishna Katha, chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra regularly. So these and all things will help us to make the mind in a controlled status. So in the text 31, Sukadeva Goswami is mentioning that the universal form, the 7 elements of the body, like the thin layer of the skin, and then skin, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow. So all these things, they all starts appearing, and they all made of earth, water, and fire. So this is a gross body. And the subtle body, like a life breath, is produced by the sky, water, and air. So these are like so we see that, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so the whole material world is prominently made by these 3 elements, like earth, water, fire. Of course, the living force is produced by the sky, water, and air. So these things. If we see in this, the water is the common element in both the gross and the subtle. So that's why water, water is the most important element in this material world. We hear from Bhagavad Gita also, even the food or any grains or eatables, if they need to be produced from the earth, water is the essential element. And Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that how the water will come into this earth planet or in this universe, only through the yajna. So when people does the yajna, and then that satisfies the demigods. Of course, that satisfies the Krishna, and obviously the demigods are pleased. And when the demigods pleased, then they shower the rains. From the rains, we get the water. So that's why it is very important for us, for all of us, to take up this process of yajna, even to live in this material world, because we require water, and through the water we get all the eatables, vegetables, or grains, all those things to keep the body active. So it's very important. And Prabhupada also mentions that the breathing air of life is produced by the sky. So that's why he recommends that it is good for health to stay in the open air, or taking bath regularly, and to live in an ample space, so that that is favorable for the healthy vitality. So of course, the eating the fresh produce from the earth, like grains and vegetables, drinking the fresh water. So it's all good for to keep up the gross body in a nicely manner. So because these are the elements that keeps the gross body. And then text 32, Sukadeva Goswami is saying that the sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature. And the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. And the mind is subject to all kinds of material experience, happiness and distress. And the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so the living entity in this material world, entrapped by the material body, so he identifies himself with the body relationship. So he forgets his own identity as the pure spirit soul. So that is called false ego. So it's a false ego. And this false ego associates with material modes, different types of material modes. We have like sattva guna, raja guna, tamo guna, like that. And the sense organs are attached to these modes of material nature. And the mind is the instrument. So, but here we see that, the intelligence. So when we have a proper intelligence, or our intelligence is very sharpened, then we can change everything in a better manner. So that's why we see in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Sumedha Saha, like people who has the good intelligence, they take up this process of bhakti yoga or Krishna consciousness. For Kali Yuga, it is chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, like that. So in the text 33, we see that the universal form is covered by the gross form, such as those of planets. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that this whole universal form is covered by these gross elements, like earth, water, fire, air, sky, and then also mind, intelligence, and false ego, like that. So like how these coverings are just, it gives analogy like how the sun is covered by the clouds. Even though clouds are the byproducts of, they are created by the sun only. But when the clouds are there, then one cannot see the sun properly. Of course, clouds cannot cover the whole sun, but when it is covered for us, then we cannot see. So similarly, this Krishna is also covered by these gross elements. How we can see Krishna? By removing this gross elements form to fill our eyes with Krishna's love. So Lord Brahma says, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Vrideshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupa Govindam Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajam, like that. So when our eyes are anointed with full of love for Krishna, then we can see Krishna everywhere. So then our the material vision is gone, and then our spiritual vision will appear. So in text 34, we see that beyond this gross manifestation, Krishna has the transcendental manifestation, and it has no beginning, no intermediate, and no end. So therefore, it's beyond the limits of expression or mental speculation. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that this gross external body of the Supreme Lord, like universal form or Virat Rupa, so is manifested in certain intervals. Like we see that when the universe appears, then the Krishna's universal form is there. When the universe is annihilated, then that material or universal form is gone. So this is not the eternal form. But Krishna has an eternal form, that's a transcendental. So it's above the matter. So Lord Brahma says, am I right? This is anadiradir, like it has no beginning, no end, and no intermediate stage, like, and everything comes from him only. And in text 35, we see that neither of the above forms of the Lord described. I described unto you from the material angle vision is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know him very well. So Prabhupada mentions that the impersonalist, they think that the universal form or impersonal Brahma Jyoti is the ultimate. But pure devotees, they don't accept this Krishna's universal form as the ultimate. They see the Krishna's original transcendental form as the ultimate. In the Bhagavatam also said, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti. So there are stages of absolute truth. So someone thinks that, Krishna's Brahman effulgence is the ultimate, but like that. But the pure devotees, they think, they understand that Krishna's personal form is the transcendental personal form is the ultimate. So that's why they worship Krishna's personal transcendental form, like Supreme Lord Krishna when he appeared on at the planet, or when his incarnations like Lord Ramachandra, Lord Narsimhadev, Varaha Bhagavan, like that. So in text 36, we see that Krishna manifests himself in transcendental form, and being subject of his transcendental name, quality, and Taurus, all these things. And although he is unaffected by all such activities, he appears to be so engaged. So when Prabhupada mentioned that when Krishna comes in this material world, so he comes in his own transcendental form. Unlike we are forced with the material body, but Krishna comes in his original transcendental form. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam. It's like his appearance and his activities are all transcendentals, because he appears in the transcendental form, unlike us. So in the text 37 and 40, we see that Sukadeva Goswami is mentioning that so there are different types of living entities. All are created by the Supreme Lord. So how they get different kinds of body is based on their past deeds. So this talks about this brings out the nature's law or the philosophy of karma. And Sukadeva Goswami gives that, many living entities or personalities in this sloka, like, includes Brahma and his sons like Daksha, and the Manus like Vaivashvata Manu, or demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna. So there are so many personalities like inhabitants of Pitraloka, Siddhaloka, Charanas, Gandharvas. Then we have ghosts, spirits, and then we have animals in the forest, birds, household animals, like that. And he also divides all these living entities into different ways, like, some are born from the embryos, and some of them are from eggs, some of them are perspiration, and some of them from the seeds. So whether they are in water or land or sky, they all go through the happiness or distress, or mix the happiness and distress. So it's all based on their past deeds. Karmana daiva netrena, like, So, but based on their past karma, Supreme Lord puts each living entity into different types of body. So Bhagavatam also says, right? Karmana daiva netrena, jantur deho patya. Like, based on the past karma, so one will be put into certain type of body. And Padma Purana also mentions, like, how many types of living entities are there. Like, we have 8.4 million species, like Jalaja, Navalakshani, Stavara, Lakshayamsati, like that. There are 900,000 types of living entities in the water. There are 2 million types of species of plants or trees, like that. So there are different types of, there are 1.1 million species of insects, worms, and there are 1 million types of species of birds, like that. There are different types of living entities in this universe. We see that, but they are all created by the Supreme Lord based on their past karma. So as long as we have this past karma, whether it is good karma or bad karma, so we all will stay in this material world only. So like how of course, some of the living entities may experience or may live a little bit comfortable than the other living entities. Many living entities may go through a lot of suffering, and some of them go through only little suffering, like that. Like people in this world also, in some countries, due to the lack of facilities, they go through a lot of suffering. And in some people in other country or other countries which are having with a lot of facilities, they may go with a little suffering only. But as long as one is in this material world, they will go through the suffering. So either a little suffering or more suffering, like that. Like Prabhupada gives analogy, like, when someone is in the prison, so there are different types of prison cells, like, first class, second class, third class. Maybe a person who is in the first class may have little suffering, but person who is in the third class of prison will go through a lot of suffering. And Prabhupada stresses that, one should not try to move from the third class prison cell to the first class prison cell, because they will be living in the prison only. So instead of that, one should try to come out from the prison. So similarly, here also, one should try to not to have a material body, any material body. So to break out this cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, and then go back home, back to Godhead. So that to burn all our karma. So Lord Brahma also says that in the Brahma Samhita, karmani nirdhati chakintu bhakti bhajam. Like when one takes up the process of bhakti sincerely and seriously, of course I'm talking to myself, then one can break this cycle of birth and death, and then we can go back home, back to Godhead. So thank you all for giving this opportunity. I will pause it here. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Krishna Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.